Hey everybody, how's it going? My name's Andrew and welcome to the AWS tutorial series on code deploy setup. In this tutorial series I'll walk you through how to use Amazon's new code deploy. We'll go over everything that involves creating IAM profiles to servers to your code deploy application. And then we'll use a sample repository that I have in Github to deploy an application. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go to services and we're going to want to create two IAM roles. These roles are going to be used to boot your EC2 server in case you decide to use S3 for code deploy. In this example we're just going to use GitHub. And then it's also going to be another role for code deploy to talk to your EC2 server. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to roles and we're going to create the first role. We're going to call this one code deploy. And we're going to select Amazon EC2. And we're going to go to custom policy and we're going to click select. And we can call this policy name code deploy. Now inside GitHub, in the repository that I've created, which I'll link, I have all of the policies available for you. So all I'm going to do is just copy and paste these. Okay, and we'll go ahead and create our role. So now we need to go into this role of code deploy and we need to edit the trust relationship. We can delete what's currently in there. We'll copy and paste what I have from GitHub. We'll click Update Trust Policy. Great, so we have our first one created. And that one was for the code deploy application. So now we need to create one more new role for our EC2 servers. So we'll call this EC2 code deploy. We'll choose EC2. We'll do custom policy. We'll click select EC2 code deploy. And in the deployment document, we'll give it this role. And we'll click create role. Great, so now that we have our two roles created, we're going to need to go to our EC2 instances and we're going to need to launch a new one. So we're going to go ahead and click launch an instance. For this we're going to choose the Amazon Linux AMI because it comes pre-baked with the AWS CLI. And for now we'll just choose a T2 micro. In the IAM role, you're going to want to select the EC2 role that you created called EC2 code deploy. The storage is fine. And we can tag this instance AWS tutorial series code deploy. And that'll be important later on. I've already created a security group called wide open. It just allows all traffic inbound, outbound. Since this is just a demo, there's no need to lock anything down. And we can go ahead and click launch. And I've already created an SSH key pair that I'm going to use. Okay, so we'll let this instance launch. Then once it's launched, we need to log into the instance and we need to update a couple things and configure some things. So our instance is now launched, and what we need to do is we need to log into it and run a few commands. These commands I have in the instructions section of the README of my GitHub for the code deploy example. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these. First I'm going to log into my server. I'm going to sudo up. We're going to go to the EC2 user home. We're going to run AWS configure. Now AWS configure is going to ask for your access key, your secret key, the region you want to run in, which is going to be US East 1 or Oregon because code deploy does not offer any other regions other than those. It's going to ask you your output format, which we'll type in as JSON. Okay, so our AWS CLI is configured, and now we're going to run this command to pull the code deploy agent onto the server and install it. And all I'm doing is just copying and pasting these commands here. This sed command is just a quick way to get the agent up and running faster. And now we're going to install it. And so now we'll just verify that the agent is running. And we can see the AWS code deploy agent is now running. So the next thing we have to do is we have to go over to code deploy. And we want to click Get Started. We're going to do a custom deployment. We can skip the walkthrough. We'll call this AWS tutorial series. Oop. Paste that in there. Now here's where that the name of the server comes in handy. We're going to select name, and we're going to select the AWS tutorial series. So let's say you have 15 servers all named the same value. It'll pull all of those instances in for you. Since we're only dealing with one server, one at a time is fine, but it's really nice. You can configure how many of these servers you want to deploy to, so that way you minimize downtime. The service role, we're going to choose code deploy, which is the first role that we created in the beginning. We'll click Create Application. So now that we're created, what we want to do is we want to deploy an application from GitHub to our servers. So we're going to go in here and we're going to click Deploy a new revision. We're going to say that our application is stored on GitHub. We're going to connect with GitHub. The repository name, if you go up to the top here, you can grab right here. It's going to be your GitHub username and then the repository name. The commit ID, all we're going to do is we're going to copy this SHA. And then we're going to click Deploy. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can deploy to your application servers. And I could show you real quick. In GitHub, if you go to the settings page, down to webhooks and services, you can add a service of AWS code deploy. And all this is going to do, let me log in real quick. This is going to ask you for your application name, all the different parameters that you'll need to configure for Amazon, and then what this does is that anytime you push to master, it's going to submit a deployment onto these servers. So now that our deployment has succeeded, and just to show you what the deployment is, if I go over to the example, all we're deploying is a simple index.html file that just says hello world. So if we go to the servers, go to our running instances, and this is the instance that we deployed to. We can copy the public IP, we can paste it in, and we can see we got hello world. Now if we want to change this, you can click edit, hello world from GitHub. We can click commit. Now all I need to do is just copy the latest commit. We can create a new deployment from GitHub, so we'll deploy a new revision. It's on GitHub. We'll give this as the commit ID. And we'll just copy this one more time. We can click deploy. Now the great thing about code deploy is that you could have different deployment groups. So I can have groups set up for testing, QA, production, and I can go from one environment to the next. It's really, really convenient. So our deployment has succeeded. So if we go back to our server and we click refresh, we could see from GitHub. So that in a very summed up version is AWS code deploy. There's a lot of different ways you can configure code deploy. And code deploy is free. The only thing that you have to pay for is the resources that you're using, so the EC2 servers and things like that. But you can use my sample application in GitHub. I'll leave it up here. It has all the instructions and it has the IAM roles that you need, and you could follow this tutorial as well. And you should be able to get your code deploy application up and running. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe.